Hey, Reluctant Preppers, you could have been watching this video the moment it came out.
By going to healingyourself.life and subscribing to our new sister channel, Healing Yourself. See you there. Healingyourself.life provides information for awareness, educational, and support purposes only and does not diagnose or prescribe treatment for any medical condition. Viewers are encouraged to do their own due diligence and consult with their own medical caregivers before making personal treatment decisions.
Hi, we are here today at the Red Pill Expo, and we get to interview Dr. Kendra Becker. Thank you for being with us. And you, your specialty is genetics and epigenetics, and also you've written 2 books. One is The Delicious Way to Heal Your Gut, is that correct?
Correct.
And also All You Can Eat, which sounds wonderful to most of us.
For sure.
So let's begin with how you got into, because you're here in Connecticut, where we are now, and you do family wellness. How did you get in? Because you're not as conventional as most doctors. How
Correct.
did you get into that?
So I went to college to become a nurse. And, I loved nursing. I really graduated from school and was going to be the next Florence Nightingale. And the problem was I graduated at a time where there was a lot of nurses, so it was difficult to get a job. So I ended up in Southern California. And what happened there is really at the time, California was so focused on wellness. We didn't even have beds that could hold people that were over 300 pounds. We didn't have scales. It was a completely different arena than what we have now. And it was hard to be sick in Southern California.
Wow.
Because the focus was on wellness. What else was interesting is it was right around the same time that the HMOs had started to roll out. And so what was happening to me, I was a cardiac ICU nurse, was I'd admit my patient, and we'd go over to the fax machine. It was fax machine days, and I'd get my admission paperwork. And the day that I had my aha moment was the day I picked up the admission paperwork on the patient and the discharge paperwork at the same time, and nobody had seen that patient.
Wow.
And so I knew that we were heading down a very, very slippery slope of protocol-based medicine, where we had taken out really the art and the gentleness and the things that I was taught in nursing school, like you hold your patient's hand and you tell them that it's going to be okay, and you talk about having things like chicken soup, and this was taught in nursing school, and we had gone basically to this very mechanic, kind of computer-based chart medicine, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. And so I left. Well, I was still in nursing school, but I had kind of left that kind of medical mindset. And I got involved in all kinds of different avenues in Southern California. I'd, met iridologists, I had met shamans, and I'd met all these beautiful holistic healers that really, truly trusted the earth's vibrations, and really the medicine that we could find in our own backyards. Okay. California was still the Wild West at that point, and really didn't have you still have to eat, right? And you still have to pay your mortgage. So they didn't really have a board-certified school, so I moved back to the East Coast where I was from, and went to school and graduated with my naturopathic degree there.
Okay. So do you also have an MD, or are you a naturopathic doctor?
So I'm a naturopathic doctor, and then concomitantly, while I was finishing up naturopathic school, I also went and continued my education with nursing and got an APRN. So in Connecticut, that actually allows me to sign physical forms for well visits. It allows me to do to prescribe pharmaceuticals if I want to. And ironically and quite sadly, in Connecticut, I have a larger scope of practice as a mid-level practitioner, APRN, than I do as a physician.
Okay.
And so the law in Connecticut doesn't allow pharmaceutical prescribing as an ND, because it was a law that was established in 1898, and they basically took the law from 1898 or whatever the year was, and said in the 70s, when all the regulation came down the pike, and said, oh look, we already have a law. We've been practicing this medicine for hundreds and thousands of years. So there's been some push going forward about adding the pharmaceutical prescription right to naturopathic physicians. I've already been prescribing for 12 years, and I think that there is a time and a place for it, but I worry that it's going to be a crutch for a lot of naturopathic doctors, so I'm not quite sure exactly if it's the right move for Connecticut. And really the entire community is divided, and that's the biggest concern. If everybody was on board, I certainly would support it. So.
Okay. And so in your practice, what is the most common thing that you see? Maybe we should start with, because you specialize in children.
Correct.
So what do you see happening these days in children, and that you're helping to
Sure. So I focus basically on 4 things,
Okay.
which is autism, asthma, eczema, and allergies.
Okay.
The 4As.
Yeah.
So which is all inflammatory conditions that is mostly caused by what we call oxidative stress from the environment, pollution, and things like that.
Okay.
For the last 5 years or so, I focused really, really heavily on genetics. And so I'll take a very good long look at the genetic uniqueness of that individual to be able to really target the right kind of healing. However, I've had the good fortune that the children come in first, and then the parents always say to me, well, I gave that kid those crappy genetics. And then from there, in many cases, I also see the grandparents. And so the biggest gift for me in my practice is the fact that I have the ability to influence like 3 generations.
Yes.
Because healing happens so quickly in kids. And what ends up happening is that no parent's gonna rectify their own health before their kids. I mean, we're just parents.
Right.
And so they'll work with the child. They'll see the results that the child is getting. They'll follow a similar protocol, and then grandma and grandpa will come too. And so that really is the beautiful aspect. So even though my practice is focused on children, I do have the luxury of seeing a couple of generations.
In the
That's
Bible
amazing.
it says, and the child shall lead them.
That's right. Yes.
Exactly true. Exactly true.
Okay. And in question to that, like, what are the things that you use to heal the body that's different than maybe if I went to my regular physician? On the talk that you did, you talked about some homeopathy and some other things that you use to help heal our bodies that help us. So can you explain a little bit about, since some of our viewers may not know about homeopathy, what is the theory behind and how that works?
Sure. Homeopathy is really magical. It really is. And homeopathy was the premier medicine in this country before Rockefeller kind of dissected it and rewrote medical textbooks in the 40s and 50s. And so homeopathy is the most perfect kind of medicine that we have. It's cheap, it's effective, and it creates cure. And so there were homeopathic schools all over this country. For hundreds of years, it was the premier medicine used in this country. And it gave people and empowered people to really drive the bus in their own healing. And once we switched to kind of a pharmaceutical model after following suit as to what was going on in Germany at that time, we moved more to a disease-based medicine model that created customers instead of cures. And so part of, the manufacturing of the AMA, which is a whole long convoluted story, really excluded homeopathic providers because they weren't medical doctors, they were homeopathic physicians, and really, with basically a marketing plan, turned the AMA, who at that point were the charlatans, right? What did they have to offer? They had mercury and bloodletting and lead. They were the ones that were really poisoning people.
Yes.
And really kind of rebranded how conventional medicine was working and single-handedly almost shut down the lion's share of homeopathic schools in this country. So it's not a medical model at all. It's based on what we call simulum. So a good example of homeopathy is if you get a bee sting, right? So if you get a bee sting, you get a wheal and an itch, and first a pain and then an itch, and then you see the healing happen. So if you get a bee sting, I could give you a homeopathic remedy of what's called homeopathic bee venom to be able to kind of antidote that reaction. So there's no bee venom per se in the remedy. However, what is in there is what we call energy or energetic medicine, and it's enough because our bodies are so sensitive and so in tune with how we heal that it's enough to be able to boost and balance the immune system and what we call remove the obstacle to cure.
Apis mellifica?
That's the one.
Okay. I thought that was it.
Yeah, that's the one.
No, so when you said Rockefeller, I'm
Yes.
sure some of our viewers are really like, what are you talking about?
Right.
What is going on? What did he do? And how did he influence medicine? Because that just seems like a really far-fetched, sorry to say, but it seems very far-fetched that Rockefeller could have he's obviously a very influential man. We know that. And he's into oil and all of that. But why medicine? Then why would he want to influence that?
His ultimate goal, right? I mean, first of all, he started the Eugenics Society, number one, and really believed that the some number of people that should exist on this planet is 500 million people. And so even in his time, there were far more than 500 million people on the planet, number one. Okay. Number two, his end goal was to make a lot of money and to use oil for just about everything that he could think of. So a great way to use oil is to make plastic. He started the women's movement, so he could tax both sexes and separate the family. I mean, it's like, it's to think about it, it's so infuriating.
Yeah, it is infuriating. Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh. So when we were talking about Rockefeller and eugenics, it does go into why are our fertility rates going down? Why are more people being infertile? It could be conspiracy theory here, or it could actually be that there is an actual plan that our fertility rates are going down. Maybe you want to talk a little more about that, because you gave a great talk on our infertility rates going higher.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, there is multi-factors to all of this, as we all know. I mean,
Right.
women's education and the ability to work outside the home, and all of these factors do play into it. And some of the things that we had discussed prior, too, like maybe some of the economic uncertainty of countries
Right.
people live in, all sorts of things. I focused really on the medicine and what we are seeing just in practice. Women that are really struggling to get pregnant, women that are having multiple miscarriages, and just really struggling to be able to bring children into this world. And so those are really the things that kind of get me in the gut a little bit.
Right.
And so some of the things we're seeing is just the overwhelming toxicity in our society. Too many plastics, too many antibiotics, too many poisons in our waters and our foods. And all of those things put our bodies into like a cell danger response. They cause a whole systematic inflammatory response. When that happens, you basically go into fight or flight. You turn into, like I always describe to my patients, a cave girl running from a saber-toothed tiger. And so if you're a cave girl running from a saber-toothed tiger, you're going to suppress ovulation because it's dangerous and unsafe for your organism to grow another human.
Right.
And then that's the female body. The male body is, with all the toxicity, is really damaging sperm quality and count. So we have half the sperm, not me, I don't have any sperm, but men have half the sperm count that our fathers and our grandfathers did.
Right.
Half.
Yes.
And that is well documented, and it's a downward trend that they've been following for at least the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
So the exogenous stress, sperm is different than an egg. It's a real friable gamete, right? It's very, very susceptible to radiation. It's susceptible to a lot of oxidative stress. So if there's that kind of exposure in the world, those little sperm are going to be damaged. And whether it's damaged because they're not going to be able to swim where they're supposed to swim, or whether it's damaged and they're not going to even be able to get out of the gate, we're not really sure. It all depends on the toxic load.
Right.
And so, when you start there and you can't even achieve pregnancy or conception, well, then you head back to the doctor's office for more pharmaceutical intervention and a whole lot, a big slippery slope of potentially chronic disease.
Right. Yes, I think you mentioned just even with the IVF now that's going up, people
Crazy.
getting that those chemicals cancer causing and things like that too. So that is a real problem, and do you see, how do you solve that? How, in a natural way, what can we do to protect ourselves, for men to protect their sperm,
Mm-hmm.
and for women to protect our ovaries that we do get? Actually, it was an interesting quote that it's actually, it's from our grandmother, because when my mother was being carried, she had her ovaries and her eggs inside when it was my grandmother, and she was in my grandmother's womb. So I thought that was really important. So we do need to protect everything. So how do you go about either detoxifying our bodies and also helping women to get their fertility back? Is that possible?
It's always possible. I truly, truly believe the human body has healing within it. It's just our job as holistic providers to help what we call remove the obstacles to cure. And so I think that there's always hope, number one. Okay. Number two, I'm a huge advocate for prevention. So it's like when we know better, we do better. And so we start with our kids, because you're absolutely right. You carry your daughter, and then your daughter carries her daughter. So
Right.
Your health, the implication of your health has a bearing on your grandchildren, for sure. And that's been well studied by Pottinger's cats. And so if anybody doesn't know that study.
No, I don't know that study.
That's an interesting study. I think what they did is they took a generation of cats and they fed them all milk, like cream, for their entire life. They all had kittens. The kittens were fine. And then those kittens had kittens, and those kittens had tons and tons of birth defects. And so it's a really interesting study that shows the multi-generational influence. And so that's my biggest concern, is that particularly with pharmaceuticals, I mean, we've already influenced an entire generation. And
Right.
So it's a matter of really getting to that place where we can just start the education and stop it now. get rid of the plastic in your house, eat food that is organic and non-GMO, and have these conversations with your kids. My kids still, we go into the grocery store and they're like, how come we always shop in the health section of the store? And I'm like, what's the rest called? Death and disease? Like, we shop in 2 aisles. You get your produce, you get your meat, you turn around, you leave.
Exactly.
If it's got a coupon, run screaming away, because it's a product. It's a manufactured, it's not food, it's just junk. And so these are the conversations you have. And for me, I'm funny. Well, at least I think I am. And so, I like to just really kind of bring that light to my patients and to my friends, because I want them to think about it and not feel intimidated and not, that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, was because here these people are really sick and they're coming to you for counsel, because nobody ever comes to me. I'm not the first doctor anybody sees. I'm like the 6th. And so when they come into my office and that you can do your healing through food, and you can't prescribe a very complicated diet that requires all this elaborate time and steps and things like that. So
we don't have that time.
Because what's going to happen? So people are going to throw their hands up and say, forget it. And then they're going to call you a charlatan because everything that you tried to do was so complicated. So you have to keep things very simple. And that's all the human body wants. They want nutrients from their food. And that's part of the problem with junk food, is that it's not nutrient dense, it's calorie dense. So you're starving. You're really nutrient starving. Yes. And so, when you feed your body nutrients, it heals. And I think that's really the take-home message. And so the healing and the reversal may take time for some people, but if we can, not start, then we're in better shape. And if we have to go back and do some healing from, damage or exogenous influences or just some challenge that somebody didn't come to the realization that they really needed, it's absolutely possible.
Great. Now, if people want more information, you have 2 books out, and I want to retouch on those, because I'm sure they could learn a lot of maybe some of the stuff we were talking about. One, again, is A Delicious Way to Heal the Gut, which I think is so important. We at that Red Pill Expo here, we've been talking a lot about healing the gut and how important the gut is. I think you talked a little bit, maybe I'll have you talk just briefly before we go, about how important your gut is to the whole body, your brain, everything.
For sure. So our microbiome, which is the balance of our bacteria in our gut, is as unique to us as our fingerprint. That's number 1. The microbiome, the microbial cover in the gut, is the same as the microbial cover in the brain. So if our gut is healthy, our brain is healthy. And if our gut is not healthy, our brain is not healthy. And so certainly being supportive of the right balance of bacteria in the gut by nourishing it with the right food is absolutely imperative to our health.
Great.
And so, we could
Thank
talk
you.
for hours.
I know. I think that's so true. So, but again, since we don't have hours, try her. You can use it at the library or on Amazon.
Both. Yep. Also on my website.
And then the other one we will all love is All You Can Eat.
Correct.
So that sounds wonderful. And thank you so much, Dr. Becker, for being with us. We really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you. And if you want to see more of Dr. Becker and all of the things that are going on at the Red Pill Expo, you can enroll at the Red Pill University, and it's $25, I believe, a month. Also, make sure you tell us about your wonderful website that they can go and get more information about you.
Sure. It's drkendrabecker.com.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, healingyourself.life viewers.
We need your help in enabling us to continue to create great health videos for you.
So please support our mission by going to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledging any monthly amount you can.
Your pledge will also help us to afford a new Lyme peptide treatment therapy to improve our memory, and we will report on our progress to benefit you and others.
So remember, go to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledge today.
Were you going to tell them to go to patreon.com/healingyourself to pledge to help our memory treatment?
I thought I did. I'll do it. So please go to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledge today.
Thanks.